my name is Urmila. Welcome to Virtual MOSI here at MOSI. Today we're in our Mission Moon Base exhibit, and this week is Forensics Week. So today we're going to be doing some chromatography activities. Yesterday, if you caught us on our Facebook Live, we did fingerprinting analysis. If you keep watching us for the rest of the week, tomorrow we're going to be doing handwriting, and Thursday we'll do fiber and hair analysis as well. On Friday, there might be a little bit of a mystery, so we hope you join us for the whole week. So let's get started with chromatography. Chromatography is a way that you can separate a chemical into its component things and match things, especially things like ink samples. It was first used in around 1900 to separate plant pigments like chlorophyll. So these pigments are yellow, green, orange, colors like that, and that's where it gets its name. Chroma means color, and graph means to write, chromatography. So today is going to be paper chromatography, and let's get started. So here are the materials that we're going to be using. I have some tape, acetone or nail polish remover, rubbing alcohol, paper towels because science is messy, clear plastic cups, paper plates, white coffee filters, some skewers, a pair of scissors. I have 3 pen samples. Today I'm using a dry erase Expo marker, a permanent Sharpie marker, and a black pen. I also have a pencil. Alright, so let's set up our activity. I'm going to use a clear plastic cup and one of the coffee filters, and I want to cut this into a very long strip. Now while we're doing this, if you have questions about anything, please feel free to leave it in the comments and I can answer, or we can also answer later. Here's my strip, and I want to make sure it's about the size of the plastic cup. So I'm gonna measure it real quick. So we need to cut off a little bit. I'm gonna trim that. Alright, that's a little bit better. So we'll get rid of the rest of our paper, save that for the next part. And what we're going to be doing is using one of the pen samples and also the rubbing alcohol. So chromatography needs 3 different things for it to work. It needs a mobile phase. This is the stuff that moves, so that's our rubbing alcohol. It needs a stationary phase. That's the stuff that stays still. That's our coffee filter. And it also needs a sample. So that's what we're using our pen for. So the way we set this up is I'm going to write in pencil the name of my sample onto this strip. So this pen is called OptiFlow. I'm going to write OptiFlow at the very top.
What can they use if they don't have a coffee filter?
Oh, that's a great question. Some other things you can use if you don't have a coffee filter are paper towels. You can use paper. Anything white and absorbent will probably work. So try those out. And if you get a bit of success, maybe you can post a picture and share with us. So this is our sample. I labeled it with OptiFlow. I'm also going to label the mobile phase that I'm using, which is rubbing alcohol. So I'm going to write RA. Right, and then I'm going to draw a sample of our pen that we're using close towards the bottom. I'm going to leave about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch at the bottom for a little bit of space. And I'm going to draw a black rectangle, just like this. Right, and this is how you prepare one sample strip. And we're going to be using our plastic cup as the apparatus to hang on. Alright, so that's what we're going to use our skewers for. So I'm going to tape this to the middle of the skewer. just like that. And we want to check the level. So when we put it in, we want our paper to be hanging above the bottom of the cup. We don't want it to touch. So right now it's touching a little bit, so I'm going to trim a little bit off the bottom.
What if they don't have rubbing alcohol?
That's a great question too. If you don't have rubbing alcohol, there's a few different solvents or things that dissolve other things that might work. So I also have nail polish remover, which is another thing you can use. You can use water, but you probably want to save those for right now. But any of these three things you can use. You may also need to switch up your samples, and we'll talk about that in a little bit too. Alright, so that's perfect. It's hanging above the bottom of the cup, and our sample as well as our mobile phase is visible. Alright, now for me, I can probably fit a few more samples onto my skewer. If you're using a smaller cup, then you may only be able to fit one per cup, which is perfectly fine. If you're using a big one. Alright, so here I have another one that's, and for this one I used 3 samples. Oop. We had it start a little bit, but that's okay. Alright, so we used a Sharpie, which is the first one, the dry erase marker, which is the second one, and our OptiFlow, which is the third one. So you're going to put these in here, make sure they're all okay, and then we're going to take our rubbing alcohol, and we want to pour some in the bottom of the cup before we put our samples in. We want the level of the rubbing alcohol to be above the level of the filter paper, but below the level of our sample. So you're gonna see if that works. I think that'll work. There we go. So it's above the level of our coffee filter, below the level of our sample. So now we wait for a while. While we wait, we can talk a little bit about what's going on. As our filter paper is dipped into our alcohol, the alcohol starts to travel up the filter paper. This is called capillary action. You might have seen this before if you ever have fresh cut flowers at home in a vase. The water travels up using the same thing, capillary action. Or if you've ever done the activity where you put a stalk of celery into water that has food coloring in it and the celery turns blue or purple or orange, that's also capillary action. It's when liquids are drawn up through something that's absorbent. So that's what's happening right now. And if you take a closer look, you might notice that the ink is traveling up the filter paper. So the ink, each ink in each sample is made up of different chemicals, and even though they're all black, they might have a different recipe of ingredients. So each manufacturer, each different type of pen, even the year that it was made might have a different recipe for just black. So this is a really cool way of finding out what those compounds or ingredients are. As they move up, some compounds are going to move up much easier and they're going to be towards the top. Some compounds are going to move a little bit harder and they're going to be close to the bottom. Some compounds might not move at all. So that means that our mobile phase, or the rubbing alcohol, doesn't dissolve whatever that ink is made of. So we're going to set this off to the side for a little bit and we'll revisit that in a couple minutes. Like I already mentioned, if you wanted to try this at home, you can switch up the things that you're using. So as far as the mobile phase, these are two good options, the nail polish remover and rubbing alcohol. But you can also use water at home or another liquid if you want to try it, as long as you have your grown-ups' permission. As far as the stationary phase, you can use coffee filters, or paper towels might work. If you have copy paper at home, that might work too. If you have watercolor paper, things like that will work too. Just make sure it's white because we are looking for differences in color. So having it be white works the best. as far as your sample, this is where you can go crazy. You can just look around your home or office or art supplies. I've used 3 black pens because often we're talking about forensics and people tend to write in black pens. But at home you can use magic markers, you can use your ballpoint pens, you can use Sharpies, dry erase markers, whatever you have at home, and they don't have to be black. You can try other colors as well to see what colors make those markers up. So, as far as evidence, if we find a note as part of a crime scene, we might be able to do a lot of different analysis. Yesterday, we can take fingerprints from that note to see maybe who wrote it or who touched it afterwards. Today, we can take the ink that's on the note and see if we can match it up to a suspect's pen. You'll find tomorrow that you can analyze the handwriting that might be on the note. And then on Thursday, there might also be fibers in that note, or maybe the paper that the note is made of. You can analyze that fiber. So there's a lot of things that we can do with just a note as evidence. If you would like to try this in a different way, you could also use this as an art project. So you can just take a filter paper or whatever other paper you're using, you can draw on it using your different samples, and then you can use a spray bottle to spray your mobile phase on it. So that'd be pretty cool. If you didn't feel like doing science today, you can do art using chromatography instead. All right, let's take a look at our sample here. I'll hold this up in the back so you can see it a little better. Does that work? All right, so if we look at our first sample, we can see that it's mostly made up of purple ink, but we see a lot of it left at the bottom too. So we know that some parts of that sample are not soluble or not able to be dissolved in alcohol. If we look at our second sample, the one in the middle, that's our dry erase marker, that hasn't moved at all. So no part of that marker is soluble in rubbing alcohol. If we look at the one all the way on this side, we might be able to see that it has some black parts at the bottom still. There's some purplish, pinkish parts in the middle, but it also has a bunch of orange and yellow. Hopefully you can see that on here. So we're already beginning to see the different parts that make up our black ink and that they're different. Right? So I can show you a couple samples that I made earlier. Alright, so these samples are the same as that. You will see a few more colors in our OptiFlow pen, and the Expo marker hasn't moved at all, which is all the way over to your right. And then the middle one is our Sharpie, so that's mostly purple and blue colors. I did the same 3 samples in acetone or nail polish remover, and this is what they looked like. So the Expo marker, which is all the way on this side, moved a little bit. All the way on the left is a Sharpie. You can also try these in water and see if they'll move anything. One cool thing to learn about this that you could probably use at home right now is if anyone plays a prank on you and draws on you with Sharpie marker while you're taking a nap, you can use rubbing alcohol to wipe it off your face. So that's pretty cool. Do we have any other questions I can answer?
Does the liquid need to be clear?
It helps if the liquid is clear so that you can see the different colors. However, I used this, which is very lightly, I guess, lilac colored, and it worked just as well. So it just needs to be mostly clear. Alright, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed our presentation today about chromatography, and hopefully you catch us the rest of the week for our forensics activities. And again, my name is Urmila, and thank you for joining us on Virtual MOSI. Have a nice week.